What's going on, everybody? Brett here, and we're back. Total War Warhammer 2, playing another 2v2, and it's another one in our series of randomly generated armies, or autogen. And today we're going to be playing as Bretonnia. Our allies, the Empire, and we're up against the Skaven and the Lizardmen. It was a great game. The guys I was playing with were a great group of guys. Thank you again for subscribing to the channel. I really appreciate it. And I was playing with my friend Triari in Discord, and he requested that I play the Bretonnians, so I did, and it ended up being a really fun, kind of thematic choice, you know, us joining together with the Empire to take down the Lizardmen and the Skaven, who in reality would never work together, but in this battle they kind of don't work together either, so it's almost like they're just in different parts of the battlefield taking on two different armies. It almost feels like a three-way battle. But anyway, very unique map here. We have a high ground position with a ramp in the center to go up and down, and a low ground position with really clear lines of sight for artillery. And thankfully for me, we have plenty of artillery. We randomized and got the Blessed Field Trebuchet, which is a unit you don't get to see very often, but is very cool. It has a pretty decent range of 440 and shoots magical ammunition. So it's going to be great. It's going to be great versus the Skaven. Has lots of kind of splash damage that it does, and it's going to be very powerful against them. My Empire ally decided to go ahead and deploy his artillery on the low ground. I can't say that I blame him. He asked that I protect his artillery, and I did my best this game, and I think we ended up doing a great job together. Very good teammate. He used the Hammer of the Witches, which he had in his randomized army. Probably the most powerful single target artillery piece in the game. It does magic damage. It has physical resistance, which is something that I think a lot of people overlook in artillery duels, cannons versus cannons, that sort of thing. It's very difficult. Ooh, God, I'm missing something very important. Oh, but it's very difficult to counter skirmish him, that artillery piece out of the game. So this is what happened, guys. Sorry, I almost missed it. I paused it here. I had a Vanguard deployed group up on the high ground to help my my ally, in the same way that he's helping me with his artillery. I was hoping to help him by getting at least some scouting information done. But the Lizardman player he randomized the first game, and I think he just kept his randomized army because it looked extremely similar, and I think it is the same from yesterday's video. But what I did was I put a group of mounted yeomen here in the forest, who are the very cheap peasant tier cavalry. They have shields. They're not expected to last long in melee, and you'll see here they're already routing, and they've only lost 5 models, so that's pretty poor. But they're there to meet shield for the extremely powerful and versatile Pegasus Knights. We can take a quick look at them in slow-mo as they move around. They're very cool. These are not the royal Pegasus Knights. They don't have that kind of Grail Knight buffs. They don't have the physical resistance or the like the Blessings of the Lady, the Perfect Vigor. But they are strong nonetheless. They're very good anti-large. But in this instance, I Vanguard deployed on top of 3 groups of Chameleon Skinks. Very dangerous. But I decided, you know what? Let's dive down. The Pegasus Knight stats in melee are so much greater than these little Chameleon Skinks with their blow darts, and we can just probably dumpster some of them before the fighting even starts. And we certainly did. 12 models already dead on this group, 2 on this group, and our Pegasus Knights won't lose a single model from this engagement. They'll take some damage for sure. The Chameleon Skinks are not pushovers, and this group here is not engaged in melee, and they have 360 fire, so as they run away, they'll be shooting us almost certainly unless they get out of range. And the mounted yeomen thankfully did not route off the map. They're going to route to here. I'll recover them and bring them back to my side of the battlefield to use for later. But I'm gonna get these kills while the killing is good. Yeah, so 18 kills already going down there, and that feels pretty good. And my opponent, the Lizardman player, really doesn't have the speed to come here and reinforce. I honestly, in retrospect, probably could have just left my Pegasus Knights in combat here and absolutely decimated these. But the Lizardman player was very smart. He engaged with one that he really couldn't escape with, and he pulled out with the other 2 and starts to shoot my Pegasus Knight. So that ends up being not a favorable position, and I pull out. Also, we're fighting in the forest, which means debuffs for my large Pegasus Knight units. Okay, so Hammer of the Witches, great single target. He also has the Hellstorm Rocket Battery, which is super fun artillery piece. Have to be careful of friendly fire, which I think happens once or twice this game. But really huge arc of fire, really huge spread, and it's going to be great at decimating large groups of Skaven infantry. Unfortunately, there's really nothing but Skaven slave spears in the front line for our opponent, and that's pretty much what he's going to be shooting at until he decides to redirect his artillery later in the game. So I have a front line here, a mix of men-at-arms with shields, and in the very center I have foot squires, who are really cool, cost-effective, armor-piercing, anti-infantry units. And when I was talking to Triari, so because this is a randomized battle, you know, we didn't get to pick our armies, but one of the stipulations for my randomized battles, as opposed to, let's say, another YouTube channel, is I allow the taking away of certain spells and the reduction of chevrons, so that we can maximize our gold, get even more units, and maybe fill gaps in our army. And I was debating on getting 2 units of men-at-arms with spears to help protect against any large dinos or hell pit abominations and rat ogres, which we'll see on the other side of the battlefield here. Look at this guy. But Triari kind of talked me out of it. He said, you know what, man, try another group of foot squires, and that's what I ended up taking. More armor piercing for the front line, a bit more durable. I thought it was a very good choice. And it's not great at fighting monsters by any means, but they can hold all day long versus lower tier Skaven clan rats and Skaven slaves, if you look at them here. In case you guys have never seen these muling beasts before, you'll notice the difference between the slaves. They're very unarmored, but that's what they're there. They're there just to die. They're there to absorb shots, and that's what they're going to do. My lord that I ended up randomizing was the Prophetess of Heavens. So I gave her a mount with some of my extra gold because I think she really needs the mobility, and I cut down her spells and abilities to the Aura of the Lady to give us some magic resistance, which I thought might protect us from Bastiladon, Solar Engine Fire, as well as Warp Lightning Fire. That 12% magic resistance could be relevant, and Skaven are pretty well known for their magic. Harmonic Convergence to give melee attack and melee defense buffs. Wind Blast is always good against the Skaven. You can kill hundreds in a single Wind Blast if applied correctly, and they blob up for you. As well as the Comet of Cassador, which I think is just really reliable damage in a blob. And I want to say I get 2 really great Comets this game, and end up racking up quite a few kills. Arcane Conduit to regen my Winds of Magic, and a unique item that she possesses, the Assault Stone. Assault of Stone. It's a bombardment, very similar to like a Rain of Fire type ability. It hits in an AoE, and basically she drops boulders out of the sky. Yeah, pretty terrifying spell. It does a lot of damage. You only get 1 use of it, but for a couple hundred gold, it usually means dozens of kills. So I thought it was worth it there. 3 archers in the backfield. 2 of them have the Pox arrow, so I divide them up to try and spread that poison debuff around. And of course, there's no visual difference between these guys. So if you've seen one archer, you've seen them all. And probably the main players in this battle, the very important kind of key components. Of course, I showed you I had these mounted yeomen here. I also have 2 more groups Vanguard deployed in this forest here. And I'm going to use one of them in just a moment to go out front and kind of stop the advance of some of the troops and delay them for as long as possible so that our artillery pieces can do their work. And I think we missed a shot from the Hellstorm rocket battery, but don't worry, we'll get plenty more shots as the battle progresses. And then the meat and potatoes of my army, which is really, I have triple knight errants, who are the anti-infantry version of cavalry for the Bretonnians. Very cheap. I think they're 700 gold, and they look awesome. They're kind of like ragtag knights, searching for the Holy Grail, trying to earn the right to search for the Holy Grail. And then the Defenders of the Fleur de Lis, which are these kind of blue and white schemed regiments of renown who have Frenzy. And that Frenzy makes them very powerful against infantry. An excellent choice, I think, when fighting against the Skaven. They also have silver shields, which I did not notice until just now. Regular knight errants only have bronze shields. So that's a really great boost to them. Makes them awesome. I think they're an auto-occlude, honestly, against the Skaven. And check out the devastation as the rockets rain down from the sky and take out tons of models. 18 Skaven slaves dead there, 14 dead there. And then a Grail Relic. Sorry for the long introduction, guys, but I hope you enjoy taking a look at some of these units, especially those of you who've never seen them before. The Grail Relique, or the Grail Relique, depending on how you want to pronounce that. Essentially a dead Grail Knight tied to a fake horse and carried around by peasants. You use it to boost the, see if we can get a little closer there and take a look at the names of its abilities, if it'll let me. There we go. The Icon of Devotion, plus 12 leadership, and immune to psychology. Excellent. Frenzy as well, doesn't really get kills, and 20 physical resistance. This thing won't get you any kills, but it'll keep your foot squires fighting forever if it's kept together with them. And it has a pretty decent radius on its aura. Okay. Last but not least, one of the main players in my army, the Knights of the Realm. So you'll see these guys look different slightly from the Knights Errant. They're a little bit beefier, nicer helmets, stuff like that, nicer barding for their horses. These guys are your anti-large. They're your mobile anti-large kit, and they have a bonus versus large. I'm going to need them to take down the Rat Ogres, the Hell Pit Abomination, all those types of things on the other side of the battlefield. And I have 2 of them, one on each side of the battle. And I was very happy to have them in addition to my Pegasus Knights, in case it came down to a monster mash with the Lizardmen. So the Lizardmen, lots of Saurus with shields, 2 Solar Engine Bastiladons, going to be giving them that ranged fire. 240 range, fire, and magic damage. Not really relevant against the Empire, but it's still going to pack a punch whenever they hit them. And these little skinks on the side here throw poison spears whenever they get close enough. And then 2 Feral Bastiladons, so absolute line breakers here to mix in and amongst the Saurus. And there's Spear Saurus, there's regular Saurus, so they're going to have a good time trying to fight the Empire. They also have a Skink Priest with the Lore of Heavens up on a Pteranodon, and he'll be casting spells. You'll see Chain Lightning from him, as well as a Thunderbolt. Those are things he's going to be casting throughout the game, as well as the Saurus Old Blood here on his Raptor buddy. Very tanky, very fast, great at dueling other lords, especially great at dueling heroes. That's kind of like where he makes his money, so to speak. And of course, we already talked about the Chameleons, Skinks. Now, the Skaven player has a super wide army. He's got Rat Ogres here in the back. He may only have 1 group. No, 2 groups. This group is slightly lagging behind. But for those of you who've never seen a Rat Ogre, take a look at these dudes. Hulking masses of genetically modified, warpstone, infused, steroid rats. I mean, sewn together from other pieces of rats. And they're absolute line breakers as well. They can get in amongst the infantry and just absolutely crush them. Great armor piercing, and I think they have a bonus versus infantry. At the very least, they have Frenzy, which is a powerful effect. And finally, our opponent's artillery is getting into place, and it's what I was the most scared of this battle. 3 Warp Lightning cannon crews, and absolutely devastating against my cavalry. Fortunately for me, at the moment, he's shooting at my foot squires, at my archers, targets that aren't really valuable, and honestly may end up wasting his shots. He has a Grey Seer with the Lore of Plague. He has the dreaded 13th spell, which is going to come into play very quickly, as well as Wither for minus armor, Vermintide to summon clan rats, and yeah, that's pretty much it. He has the passive Portents of Verminous Doom to lower leadership in an AoE, as well as he also has an Assassin. Assassins are really cool. They're basically like ninja rats, and they're very good at sniping out heroes or vulnerable mages, or helping your Skaven Lord take down another hero in a bit of a 2v1. And we've sprung the trap here. Our mounted yeomen are going to charge bravely into these Skaven, knowing their doom. Now at this point, I just now was aware of these Death Runners. These guys are stealth. You can't see them until the last second. They're actually like the most stealthy, one of the most stealthy units in the game, with their concealment bombs making them unspottable. So it wasn't, you'll see here we're charging into them, but I wasn't clicked on them. I was clicked on the guys behind them. I was trying to get into these Night Runner slings, who, you know, are basically like the crossbowmen of the Skaven army. And I end up charging directly into the Death Runners, and I dealt some pretty decent damage for how weak the mounted yeomen are. They still have a 30 charge bonus, but I was trying to get on these slingers and shut them down. And then ultimately, our opponent's going to detach these clan rats. He's going to detach the rat ogres, the Death Runners, and the slings, and they're all going to concentrate trying to take out these mounted yeomen. And meanwhile, he has to advance under all of this fire, and I still have another group here to help delay. So a lot of delay tactics to make sure that we get the most of our artillery on our side of the battlefield. And yeah, look at the Warp Lightning. Absolutely devastating. I think soon he'll start targeting some more valuable targets. But before we get started fully underway, I hope you guys love this long intro because it's all very important, and I want you to understand kind of the tactics and what's going to eventually take place this game. So our Empire ally was pretty fortunate to get a nice solid front line. Double great swords, the veterans of the Empire with their Zweihanders. Very cool units. Very well armored at 95. It's a nice little buff they gave them in a recent patch, giving them a bit more armor. And Halberdiers, which are going to be his kind of bread and butter unit against the dinos, because they have anti-large and armor piercing. And for some reason it's showing me the tooltip for the crossbowmen. There we go. And charge defense against all, which is another recent addition. They used to be charge defense against large, and now they're charge defense against all. So they're going to negate the charge bonus of the Saurus as well as the Bastillodons. For his kind of hero lord crew, he was able to get the Arc Lector, a super cool unit. Probably, honestly, this dude, look at him. If you've ever seen some of the trailers for some of the old Warhammer stuff, there's one that has this guy fighting in the woods against Chaos Warriors, and it is sick. I can't remember what game it's for. Let me know in the comments below if you remember, but try and find that if you can. It's absolutely awesome, just like yelling for Sigmar and smiting dudes with his awesome hammers. But he has lots of buffs, AoE buffs, for his allies. The Grand Hammer of Sigmar, providing melee attack. The Grand Shield of Faith, providing damage resistance. And the Grand Soulfire, doing magic damage and providing a buff against magic damage. So really protecting his allies, as well as causing a miscast chance in an AoE and a great leadership bonus in any sort of blobbing situation where units group up tightly. Him giving +8 leadership can make a unit like Greatswords feel unbreakable. He also has some spearmen here in the back to help protect his crossbowmen, of which he has 2. Not a bad choice against the lizardmen. You would really want to have handgunners, ideally, to get past the high armor of a unit like a Bastillodon. You see they're rocking 140, but they are actually a pretty cost-effective way of counter-skirmishing skinks. They have the range at 160. And an Empire captain here, an old grizzled veteran with an eye patch, looking really cool, helping to anchor the front line. He has Foe Seeker to restore his vigor and give him speed. Pistoliers here. I think in the lore, these guys are kind of like the noblemen of the Empire who like really don't have to fight in melee, but they can afford guns. So these guys run around. They have very weak damage, but over time it can be pretty daunting. If they're able to fire their entire payload, let's see what their ammunition is, 12 shots, they'll get a lot of damage, and then at the end of the day you still have like a little light cavalry to run around and play with. And the big boys, where are the big boys for the Empire? Here they are. They're held in reserve, not a bad idea. Hidden in the forest, yes. The Empire Knights, let's take a look at them first. They're a bit more plain. Great at dealing with infantry. They're heavily armored at 110 armor with bronze shields. They've also been buffed. They used to really suck, but they're pretty good now. And they're going to be great at riding down Saurus, getting into the back line, chasing off skinks. And the Reichsguard. These are the anti-infantry version of their knights. It looks, they have lances. It looks like they might be anti-large, but no, they're anti-infantry, super heavily armored at 120, and their combat stats are excellent. 62 charge bonus, and they're going to be an absolute terror on the battlefield for our opponent. Yeah, you'll see here our mounted yeomen being brought to the side of the battlefield. Our Pegasus Knights, I'm microing them. Let's go ahead and speed it up. I'm microing them in kind of a zigzag pattern. I figured if I was the opponent right now, I would be focusing down the Pegasus Knights. I would see them. Oh, look at that friendly fire. We just lost 14 of our foot squires. That absolutely sucks. There's a bit of a hill here, so when my guys got here, it looks flat kind of from up above, but when my guys got on this hill, they got crushed, and that felt pretty bad. So I'm trying to shield my opponent's artillery without getting in the way. I zigzagged with my Pegasus Knights. I took a free charge on the Skaven Slave Spears, but I'm going to move them into shutting down the Warp Lightning Cannon crews. The Rat Ogres don't want any of this fight, honestly. If they turn to try and fight my Pegasus Knights, they're going to get killed. Pegasus Knights are born and bred to fight large targets like the Rat Ogres, who have no bonus whatsoever, no armor piercing, nothing that can really get through the Pegasus Knights. They're focusing down the Hammer of the Witches, which is honestly not bad for them, because despite the fact that the Hammer of the Witches has physical resistance, the Warp Lightning Cannons do magic damage. So they're going to chew right through that, and the focus fire from them is able to rout them. But they'll be back. They're a regiment of renown. They have really high resolve, leadership, and they'll be back. So my Prophetess here, seeing the first blob of the game, and I'm going to get a beautiful Comet of Casadora down. and it's going to do a lot of damage. And they're making it into my back line. They've compromised my bowmen, but now it's time, guys. The Rohirrim rides, the Knights of the Realm, the brave sons of Bretonnia are going to get in and try and kill this Hell Pit abomination. I'm going to retreat with my bowmen, and we're going to see if we can't get a nice little crossfire going to try and take down this Hell Pit. Meantime, our Pox arrows are shooting into the chaff. Our Knights Errant are going to get into the front lines. If they're not braced, the Clan Rats have no charge defense whatsoever against the Knight Errants, and they're just going to absolutely take them down. I'm even using my Defenders of the Fleur-de-Lis to pin these Rat Ogres in place. Mounted Yeomen and the Prophetess going to try and fight the Grey Seer. Wind Blast there for me to take out these Death Runners, who I was very scared of. And once that happened, I was able to force them to waver, and the Knight Errants are going to have a much better chance at routing them off the battlefield. My Foot Squire is standing firm, my Men-at-Arms standing firm. He's using his Assassin to try and snipe out. I think that was my bombardment there. But using his Assassin to try and snipe out my Grail Relic, not a good strategy. The Grail Relic is such a stupidly tanky unit. It doesn't really do that great of a job. Anything that tries to focus it, it's very hard to do. The Empire and the Lizardmen lines have clashed in earnest. The brave Knights of the Empire are charging in. The Halberdiers have surrounded this Castillodon, a great fight for them. The Saurus warriors fighting off swordsmen and spearmen, and the Arc Lector is here providing his battle prayers to try and help keep them in the fight. But they're eventually going to win out, and then they're going to have to fight the secondary line of Halberdiers. A great Wind Blast there going off from the Skink Priest. Probably overcast to do that extra armor damage. And then the Empire Knights and the Reichsguard in here trying to hold back the Chameleon Skinks, and if they catch them, they'll absolutely decimate them, but it's a pretty difficult thing to do. Meanwhile, the Great Swords chopping up these Saurus Spears, who want to be fighting large targets but can't, while the Pistoliers sit back with the crossbowmen and shoot their pistols into the backs of these Saurus. And our opponent doing a great job, or our ally doing a great job of microing there. We managed to actually take out the Grey Seer here. He was isolated in our back line. The Prophetess, in conjunction with some of our Knights, were able to take her out. And we rallied the Hammer of the Witches. It will be back online shortly. We used a lot of our Knight Errant and some crossfire from our archers to focus down the Hell Pit Abomination, who has several abilities. When it dies, it will summon a group of Skaven slaves out of its body, which is a pretty neat thing. It also has the option to instantly get a huge burst heal. It's from an ability it has called Too Horrible to Die, and it did not proc there, so they're just going to go down. And Men-at-Arms are going to try and tie down this assassin. Our Pegasus Knights had a rough go this game. I know I didn't quite show it, but I used them to tie down the artillery as I showed earlier, but then on the retreat, once things started getting too hairy for them, thanks to all the slings and such, I tried to charge them back in through the battlefield, but this time, on the retreat and the recharge, they took a lot of shots in the back and ended up, honestly, probably saving us from a lot of damage. They did their work, only 2 models left, but 115 kills on them as they rout off the battlefield. But now my Knight Errants are downfield. They're the fastest thing on the battlefield. They're going to chase off a lot of these routing Skaven, who have a racial trait that allows them to retreat quicker than they actually run. And it's time for us to get up here and join the fight. I'm maneuvering my Foot Squires, my Men-at-Arms, my archers to this ramp to try and get up here and get behind the Lizardmen lines. There's still a few Ratmen back here causing me trouble, this assassin for one. But between the Knight Errants and the Men-at-Arms, we should be able to surround and take him out. I'm even moving my Blessed Field Trebuchet to try and get some sort of line of sight here. Returning Foot Squires here, getting back into the fight. The Lizardman player doing a great job harassing the crossbowmen, trying to take them off the battlefield. Saurus warriors with shields and spears, probably more than enough to get in on these guys and take them out. So he's going to return his Saurus Old Blood. Nope, he's going back in. And the Empire player has positioned his artillery. Hellstorm's out of ammo, but the Hammer of the Witches is not, so he's going to try and do something with that. Bit of a pause here on the ramp, but we're coming up to help. And my second Common of Cassadora is going to land in and amongst these Saurus and break the last of the resolve that they do to death. And I'm also giving Harmonic Convergence to the Halberdiers, recognizing them as the best. Ooh, that was a bit dizzy. Sorry, guys. Recognizing them as the best line of defense here for dealing with these 3 huge angry Bastillodons. But they're the best bet we have for dealing with them. The Empire Captain does a little bit of damage. The Arc Lecter can do a bit of damage. But neither one of them is really suited to fighting these large, heavily armored targets. So we boost the Halberdiers, they get increased melee attack, melee defense, and our hopes and chances rise. We're going to get a rear charge here from our Knights. Right now. There they go. So now we've got our Knights of the Realm who are anti-large specialists. Their mass is going to tie these Bastillodons in place, and we're going to look to start killing them quickly. Using my healthier group of Knight Errants to try and assist these Empire Knights in taking out the Chameleon Skinks. And they're going to do a pretty good job of that. Empire Knights are pretty well worn. And our Men-at-Arms are going to tangle with some of these returning Saurus Spears, who are such a tier above Men-at-Arms, but in their current health, they're going to find it difficult to chew through them. Some of our units still in reserve, looking to get into the battle. My Blessed Field Trebuchet, I stop it because I noticed this dang artillery crew was back online. Good job from the Skaven player to try and rally and help his ally. He didn't give up. But a couple shots, well-placed shots from the Blessed Field Trebuchet actually shatters them off. So that felt pretty good. And we're chasing off the assassin here. I thought that was a pretty valuable thing to do. And the Saurus Old Blood finds itself the target of the Hammer of the Witches, basically wanting to fire point blank, as well as the crossbowmen shooting to fire. But the Arc Lecter gets in here, provides his buffs, and that's going to be game. Very good game. I had a lot of fun casting that, guys. Let's go ahead and check out the scoreboard and see where the kills really were. Prophetess, I don't hate her. There's so many more competitive picks, but stripped down, she was very cheap, and she provided a lot of damage. The Skaven player was smart not to blob up this game. Had he done so, we would have had a lot of chances to get a lot more kills. But if you look at this Blessed Field Trebuchet, which never stopped firing the entire game, 177 kills. Our Pegasus Knights win the award for best utility this game. Even in their dying, they took a lot of hits for us and provided some protection. Knights Errant really doing the heavy lifting against the Skaven. Their light armor, the fact that they had to move down the battlefield towards us meant that they were never braced, and the Knight Errants were able to run shop on them. And even the Knights of the Realm found a nice home fighting Rat Ogres and the Hell Pit Abomination, who still managed to rack up 47 kills, which is incredible. And our Bowmen managed to survive that poison debuffing the entire time. And our front line, 182 kills on these Foot Squires, was able to hold quite nicely. Let's see, what else we got going on? My ally here, who did a great job. Hellstorm Rocket Battery shot all of its ammunition. You can't ask for more than that. And his Reichsguard and Empire Knights rolled down Skinks and Saurus Warriors alike, doing great work. The Pistoliers shot all of their ammunition as well, and his front line held up nicely throughout the battles. Arch Lecter providing lots of buffs, and they held. All they had to do was hold long enough for me to beat my Skaven opponent, and then reinforce them, and they certainly did that, and were doing great besides. And Audino, the Lizardman player, getting to play the same build twice. He was able to get, I think I missed it, guys, sorry about that, but he had a pretty decent Chain Lightning on some Halberdiers that caused a lot of havoc, as well as a decent Wind Blast, which I think I did catch, that did a lot of damage as well. Wind Blast being great against lightly armored targets, and Chain Lightning just being great against infantry in general. The Chameleon Skinks never really got to come online because we were pretty much on top of them the entire game. But once again, just like yesterday's episode, for the Lizardman player, the Bastillodons with the solar engines were absolute MVPs. Even at the end of the battle, I mean, they lost, but they still had so much HP left that they were, still really effective melee monsters, even after they racked up probably almost all of these kills just from range. So they're a unit I really love to take, especially if I don't think I'm going to be facing a lot of counter artillery play. I think the Bastillodon's dual role as an artillery piece and a large anti-infantry monster can't be overstated. So guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this cast. I hope you consider subscribing if you haven't already, and like the video if you did enjoy it. All that type of stuff helps me out as a new YouTuber. And I love Total War Warhammer 2. I know that if you're watching this video, you do too. And yeah, guys, take care. and I will see you in the next one.